Today, we talk about China and how they're influencing democracies with their authoritarianism. I speak with Ian Easton, the author of The Final Struggle, Inside China's Global Strategy.
We also take a look at Taitung's famous International Hot Air Balloon Festival, and in Hashtag Taiwan, I'll show you a series of pictures that blasted President Tsai Ing-wen to internet memedom. This is Taiwan Insider.
Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to talk about China and its influence on the world. China is leaving its mark on everything from the movies we watch, the books we read, and the products we use. Many China watchers believe Beijing is trying to create a new world order. Today, I speak with Ian Easton, the author of The Final Struggle, Inside China's Global Strategy. I ask him how big a threat to the world's democracies China is.
Well, as my boss Randy Schreiber said in the foreword to the book, this is a threat like none that we've ever faced before. Certainly not in the last 150 years of American foreign policy. We've never faced an adversary that had not only the kind of military power that China has today, but perhaps even more importantly, the kind of economic clout that they have, the kind of scientific clout and capability and technological capability. And perhaps even more important than all of that is we're in a competition with a government, a country that we're very tightly tied to in so many different ways, including within our critical infrastructure, including within our own economic health. And so that makes competition very complicated, to put it mildly, and very challenging.
So how do you think this affects the average person around the world?
It impacts everybody in different ways. We saw it in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic in March of 2020, when we learned that China's government was actually holding the health of Americans hostage for political reasons, that they were denying the shipment of N95 masks that 3M makes in China, actually in Wuhan, China, and they were not going to send those to the United States. And so hospitals around America were going to have to go without PPE. And they were going to have to cancel procedures and surgeries and all manner of things of that nature. Even now, we rely very heavily on China for our PPE and also for our testing kits. And according to the Department of Homeland Security, a lot of testing kits that we get from China are actually counterfeit. And a lot of the PPE that we've gotten from China tends to break, and it's not clear whether or not that's intentional or not, but certainly it puts our health at risk. And so that's one area where absolutely everybody's impacted. Another area is that issue of the narrative, so our freedom of expression. We all, in democracies everywhere, we hold freedom of speech, freedom of expression dear. And unfortunately now, many Americans, depending on who you work for, if you work for the NBA, for example, you cannot criticize China's government. You cannot talk about how you personally feel solidarity and support for the Uyghur people that are suffering genocide in Xinjiang right now, or Tibetans or Taiwanese. And if you do that, the NBA will fire you. They have a track record now of doing that. Hotel chains like Marriott International has fired employees for even liking a tweet by the Dalai Lama. And the list just goes on and on.
Well, what about us here in Taiwan? You wrote actually the Chinese invasion threat, analyzing the possibility of China attacking Taiwan. Now that China has become so hostile, and especially in recent years, with all the warplanes coming near Taiwan, what do you think about the likeliness of them trying to attack Taiwan in the very near future?
The great debate right now is whether or not Xi Jinping is operating according to a timeline, and he will invade Taiwan by 2027. Some people say it could be as early as 2024, 2025, or whether or not he keeps an open mind and he's relying on other means to achieve that same objective. But I think it is increasingly clear that China's military is building up with a tremendous sense of urgency, that they are getting ready to invade Taiwan. So they will be ready when ordered to do that. And there's also a very large scale campaign of coercion that's going on every day in the Taiwan Strait. And unfortunately, that campaign of coercion is working. And so it also may be the case that Xi Jinping is convinced himself that he won't ultimately need to invade Taiwan. He'll be able to crumble Taiwanese democracy actually without a fight.
How do you think that we can protect our democracy with such a gigantic adversary like China?
I personally believe that the first step is for all of us to educate ourselves on the worldview of Xi Jinping himself, his lived experiences, his biography, and the plans and the intentions of the entire Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese state. We need to take a very careful look at judging the state of play in terms of strategic competition, who's winning, who's losing, where do the trend lines point. And just, I can tell you from my own personal experience over the past 3 years, when you do that, there's a bit of a wake-up moment that occurs, and you start to think to yourself, oh my God, they could be winning and we could be losing, and so we better get our act together and reform our policies and reform our behavior accordingly.
In your book, you also mentioned about Xi Jinping's past. That was actually, he had a very traumatic past. During the Cultural Revolution, he was subject to hard labor, and he was renounced by his mother. How do you think this affects his leadership and his mentality now?
You know, unfortunately, I think we're looking at an entire generation and perhaps multiple generations of elites in China, political elites in China, that have been brutalized. They were brutalized by the regime starting at a very young age. They lived through traumatic experiences. In Xi Jinping's case, he was raised by parents who themselves were brutalized and traumatized by the communist revolution. I mean, Xi Jinping's dad went to prison for attempted murder when he himself, this is Xi Zhongxun, Xi Jinping's dad, was still a teenager. And then when Xi Jinping was a teenager, his dad went to prison again. And he wasn't sure if he was going to live or die. This is a regime that brutalizes people, and I think that sometimes gets reflected in their behavior once they grow into power.
What do you think the chances of them crumbling are?
It all depends, I think, on what the people of China do, but perhaps even more importantly, it depends on what the people of democracies such as the United States and Taiwan do. If we continue to actively support them, invest in them, provide them with talent and technology, provide them with a platform in international organizations, which they tend to come to dominate, then we'll lose. There's no question. If we stay on the path that we're on today, we will lose and they will win. It's just that simple. So we have to change. And if we do change, as I believe we're perfectly capable of, if we reform our China policies, then we will be in a much better place. And we will be able to use the many competitive advantages that we have, because we have so many latent advantages. We just have yet to marshal the will to use those advantages.
Is there anything you'd like to say to people in Taiwan or around the world?
It's true that the threat is considerable. It's like nothing we've ever faced before. But it's also true that democracies have an unparalleled ability to adapt, to be flexible, to be dynamic, and to do things that will surprise everybody. We see this today with Ukraine and the Ukrainian democracy. They're doing things that are actually blowing everybody around the world away. And there's no reason Americans can't do that and act that way, and Taiwanese can't act that way.
It was fascinating speaking with Ian Easton. The whole interview will be up on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Now, if you're looking for a little more perspective on events, it helps to be high up in the air. Luckily, Taitung County has just the event to make that happen.
The 2022 Taiwan International Balloon Festival is getting ready for liftoff. A trip in one of the balloons not only takes passengers to thrilling heights, but also gives them a stunning view of the Luye Plateau in Taitung County. This year's festival features hot air balloons decorated with Hello Kitty and Taiwan's Formosan black bear mascots, among others. The festival organizers have also gathered over 20 hot air balloons from outside of Taiwan, keeping the designs a secret until the festival opens. Many of Taiwan's hot air balloon pilots have struggled to find work during the pandemic and are eagerly awaiting this year's festival. One pilot says he especially appreciates the Hello Kitty hot air balloon because the design includes traditional clothing from his indigenous people. Last year's festival was only open to Taitung County residents, but this year the event will be open to all people as long as they've already received 3 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine. The festival will kick off on July 2nd and continue for over 6 weeks. Tourism industry workers are hoping the festival attracts lots of visitors. One hotel manager says that currently half of the hotel's rooms are already booked for the festival period, a better turnout than last year. There are certainly some high expectations for this year's hot air balloon festival, but tourists and staff hope the event will rise to the occasion.
In the foothills of Nantou County, locals worship a rather unique god called the Red Flag Marshal. This week, his followers came together to perform a ceremony to ask for his help for the first time in 36 years. Itamar Waxman has this story.
Nestled in the foothills of Nantou County's Jushan Township stands a temple dedicated to the Red Flag Marshal. There, visitors are witnessing a uniquely Taiwanese form of worship, shooting gun-shaped firecrackers. The ceremonial shooting of the god's firearm for the first time in 36 years is a way of asking for his help fighting Taiwan's COVID outbreak. One local says this is his first time seeing the ceremony. The Red Flag Marshal is the only gun-wielding god in Taiwan. Before he became a deity, the marshal was a sheriff named Su Aguai during the Qing dynasty's rule over Taiwan. Su was killed while fighting a band of bandits. After his death, locals started seeing red lights at night. They believed it was his weapon, a sign of his continued protection of the community. Jushan Mayor Chen Dongmu says the gun symbolizes justice. He says policemen often come to the temple to ask the god questions. Temple head Chen Zongzheng says the ceremonial shooting of the gun is a way of asking for heaven's protection. The god is known for helping people overcome adversity and find lost items, but he is most famous for aiding policemen in cracking tough cases. Today, worshippers have one request: to help Taiwan get life back to normal.
Next up, the internet blows up over pictures of Taiwan's mild-mannered president wielding a bazooka in Hashtag Taiwan.
This week's hashtag comes from a picture that was published last Thursday. Now, I wanted to talk about it last week, but I found Dragon Boat Festival to be more thematic for the long weekend. But now that time is come and gone, and we are free to talk about whatever I want. The subject of the picture in question is none other than our own President Tsai Ing-wen. Well, her and some serious military hardware. You see, last week, Tsai visited Taiwan's 66th Marine Brigade. She was there to make sure that Taiwan's armed forces stood ready to protect the country in the lead up to the Dragon Boat Festival long weekend. The Marines assured the president that they were in fact ready and even showed her some of their equipment. And that is how we got the absolute magnificence that is images of President Tsai Ing-wen holding a rocket launcher. The launcher in question is a Kestrel anti-armor rocket, but that's not what's important here. What's important is Taiwan's 164 centimeter tall, or 5'4" for Americans like me, president holding a very lethal rocket-propelled explosive device designed to take out tanks and boats. For your information, the Kestrel launcher is 110 centimeters in length, which is about 2/3 the president's size. Now, I don't want to say that my own president isn't intimidating, but there's something comical about Tsai Ing-wen holding a bazooka. Is it out of character? Not really, because she's always stressing the importance of defending Taiwan. And there's no better imagery for that than the president holding a weapon while looking like she means business. But be that as it may, Tsai Ing-wen holding the Kestrel rocket launcher is and continues to be absolutely meme-worthy. The minute I saw those pictures, I knew there was gold in them hills. So on Twitter, I asked you guys, caption this photo, there's so much potential here. And the responses I got did not disappoint. My favorite response is from George. He labeled the picture with, "Who did you say put no coriander on the order?" Which is a dig at how divisive coriander as an ingredient is in Taiwan. You either love it or you hate it. There's no in between. I'm guessing the implication here is that Tsai loves coriander and that she's willing to blow up anybody who disagrees. The next best meme that I've seen about this picture is Tsai saying, "Say Thailand one more time," which pokes fun at the fact that people often confuse Taiwan for Thailand and vice versa. There are a lot of these memes circulating out there, and you can find more just by doing a simple search on social media. Another less popular picture to come out of this photo series is this one of Tsai Ing-wen making a gesture at a soldier with her eyes widened. I find that particular picture amusing because when viewed in tandem with the bazooka picture, it's like she's expressing the exhilaration she felt from handling a rocket launcher to one of Taiwan's finest. And I like to think she said, "Bring me more rockets!"
And before we go, here's a look at some of the other stories that are on our radar.
Two official delegations from EU member states are currently visiting Taiwan. A group of 10 high-ranking officials from Slovakia arrived on June 5th and will stay for 6 days. Meanwhile, a delegation of French senators arrived on June 8th, also for a 6-day visit. Both groups are meeting with the president and other top Taiwanese officials. Leading the Slovak delegation is Deputy Speaker of the Slovak National Council Milan Laurenčík, and for the French, Vice Chairman of the French Senate's Foreign Affairs Committee, Joël Garriot. Taiwan is facing a labor shortage in agriculture following the COVID-19 pandemic. Government statistics show Taiwan's farmers need 100,000 workers before the busy summer period. The Agriculture Ministry wants farmers to put on events to attract foreign workers to volunteer on their days off. So far, the policy has attracted only 1,000 workers. Critics say the regulations are too vague and could create a legal gray area for undocumented workers. Doctors in Taiwan are seeing evidence of new illnesses affecting children who have recovered from COVID-19. Symptoms include rashes and hives, difficulty breathing, and circulation problems. All of those point to multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, or MIS-C. Other children have developed myocarditis, or an inflammation of the heart tissue, after recovering from COVID. Doctors say parents should learn about the illnesses and look out for the symptoms in their children.
And we're back in the studio for the final question of the week. And this week I want to ask my co-hosts, well, you saw in Hashtag Taiwan how Tsai Ing-wen got skyrocketed to stardom after she held a bazooka. So I want to ask them, the next time Tsai Ing-wen goes viral, what would you like to see her being pictured with or holding? And Natalie?
Well, she actually hosts this a lot, and I love it when she does it. It's her cats.
That's a good one.
So I would love to see more of her cats.
The virality of cats is very easy.
Very easy.
You can rely on it.
Yeah, you can rely on them. For me, though, I would like to see her with an M1A2 tank. Taiwan just bought a whole bunch of them. And we're set to get our first ones in June. And those things are gigantic.
Is that going to fit in her arms?
No, it's not going to fit in her arms, but I want to see her sticking out of one, just like as if she were driving it. That'd be hilarious. Stash?
Well, I'm actually going along the lines of Natalie, but a bit maybe more off the beaten track. I'd like to see Tsai Ing-wen holding a bear cub.
Ooh, that would be pretty cool.
I think that would really break the internet. I'm not really sure you could go much further than that, particularly if it was a Formosan black bear, obviously a symbol of Taiwan.
That's right.
And, you know, I think the cuteness factor, the fact that they're so rare, all of that, I think, you know, you're looking for a real winner there.
That might be a national security risk, though.
Well, she could do the mascots. We got plenty of those.
Maybe the mascots, we'll see. But I think a live one, you know, if they can find one, if it's not going to do any harm, then that might be the best viral picture. Anyway, that's just about it from us, from Taiwan Insider. I'm Staś Butler.
I'm Natalie Tso.
And I'm Liao.
Make sure you follow us on social media. You can catch us on Facebook and YouTube.
Also on Twitter and Instagram. And do leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Or send us a private message if you're the shy type. Anyway, guys, until next week, see you around.
Bye.